And at this point, we are now recording, and I want to welcome everybody to the third installment in our webinar series here at the Illinois Instructional Materials Center. My name is Peter Tusick, and I'm the Vice President of the Illinois Instructional Materials Center, joined from the IIMC today by Leela Washington, Joe Nast, and Elizabeth Miller, who Elizabeth is our librarian, our new librarian director. Joe is our assistant director, and Leela is our database coordinator. This is awesome in that we are able to do this, and I'm very, very, very pleased that Willow is able to come. So, very brief history of when kind of first started working with Willow. Willow really took the eBraille project on by herself and was able to, as a fantastic Braille transcriber, able to get all of this off the ground. And you'll hear about all the different partnerships and people that Willow was able to wrangle to make this a reality. And within 4 years, a little over 4 years, it has now become, something that is tangible, something that we can experience. And Willow will cover that today. I've been very fortunate to have ran around the world with Willow in my previous role at Humanware, and we were in Australia together, and we were in the Netherlands earlier this year, and we've been in many a different state, wandering around this country, and I've seen Willow present on eBraille, and I really wanted us to have this sort of presentation in Illinois because it is such a it's a major endeavor. It's such a game changer in terms of what it's going to bring our field. And I think that a lot of times we've all heard of eBraille, but we don't really understand what it is. And there is no better person to bring in than Willow, regardless of her thoughts on Chicago food.
Oh no. Oh
I will
no.
allow her
Oh
to come
no.
in and talk. But she has fighting words, and it's unfortunate, but they do come up. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Willow. We'll
Thank
let
you.
you go out on that island by yourself.
Yeah. I
But
was going to
thanks.
start by telling him how you're one of my favorite people, and
Oh
now I
man.
am not going to do that. I'm
Nope,
instead going
forget
to
that.
say
Forget that.
that Chicago hot dogs are weird to me.
Exactly. Exactly. Like a real Louisvillites or whatever you are called.
I'm a Louisvillian.
A Louisvillian. But
Yeah.
without any further ado, Willow is going to really give us the perspective of a phenomenal Braille transcriber and somebody who's led this effort, give us all an understanding of what eBraille is and how it will impact all of us across the state of Illinois, whether your students, for your teachers, for those of you who are transcribers. And I'm going to toss it over to you, Willow, and thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah. Thank you. And thank you for the introduction, and thanks for this opportunity. And thanks to everybody for being here. Really enjoyed working with Peter, and I'm super excited about his new role at the Chicago Lighthouse. I think the lighthouse organizations are really wonderful, and I'm always happy to get to speak with you all and get to work with you all on things. So thanks for that. Um, so like Peter was saying, like I really like interactive presentations. So if you've got a question, please like go ahead and ask. Like you can raise your hand and we'll call on you. Or if you'd rather, like, you can go ahead and just unmute and interrupt me. You're not going to hurt my feelings. I understand you're not interrupting to be rude, so it'll be fine. But go ahead and just ask your questions. I like to present, and it's something I do a lot, but I find like all the time that someone in the audience asks a question, and the thing they ask about is totally a thing I should have brought up on my own. But I'm so familiar with it that I didn't even think about that. So I really appreciate it when people ask questions.
And the one thing I'll say is please remember you will be recorded. So we are going to archive this. So if you're asking a question, just be comfortable with it being on the archive, which many of you probably would be, but don't disclose anything crazy. We don't need that
Yeah,
on the archive. All right.
yeah.
Behave.
Um, and just a little bit about me. So I'm Willow Free. My pronouns are she, her. I work at APH. I've been there for 13 years. I started as a Braille transcriber. Then I was a QA working primarily on Braille products. And then I was a Braille technology product manager. And now I am like global innovations technical product manager. But my focus is still very much like Braille, tactile graphics, and technology, and that includes both hardware and software. And I really enjoy getting to work in this field. All right. So our agenda, like I'm hopeful that most everyone has heard of eBraille. Uh, but what I want to do is kind of walk through like what is eBraille, why eBraille, how did we make eBraille, and then we'll get into like how you create the files, how you use the files, what's coming next, and any questions. If there's time, we'll do a demo, but I'm not super nervous about getting that demo in because I've got a video that shows the whole thing. So worst case scenario, I can send you the demo. And if you're really passionate, I can send you an early build so long as you promise not to convert an entire library with an unreleased build. So as long as you don't do that, it'll be okay. All right, let's get into it. So, why eBraille? So eBraille, is a new Braille document type. And the idea is to address the challenges of multi-line Braille. It really started with the Monarch. So we've got the Monarch at APH. It's 32 cells by 10 lines. And when we were like first starting on the Monarch, it was like, how big should it be? And everybody in the room was like 40 cells. Like, obviously, that's what we want. We all knew that there would be challenges to doing a 40 cell multi-line, but like, why not start with, well, this is the standard. Let's see what that looks like. And we did our testing, and 40 wasn't going to work. It was too big. It was going to be like 2.5 feet long. It's not going to fit in the kid's desk. It's not going to fit in their backpack or their locker or anything. Um, it's going to be hard to carry. It's going to be more expensive, and it just wasn't realistic. And through our testing, we found 32 by 10 to be the right size. But now we've got this new problem in that the size of the Monarch doesn't match the traditional size of Braille, which on 11.5 by 11 is, 40 by 25, 38 by 25, but more than 32. Um, and I mean, that is a problem, and it's a problem for APH and the people that use our products. But it also highlighted another problem, which is okay, we got the Monarch, which I think is awesome. And then there's going to be other displays, which I probably won't think are awesome because they were made by my company. But I'm sure they're going to be great. So there's going to be other displays. They're going to have a different size. They're going to have different requirements. So you're going to have all these new displays, these new layouts, um, these new challenges. And then what's going to happen is you're going to end up segregating your Braille library. This batch of files was made for paper. It's 40 by 25. This batch of files was made for the Monarch. It's 32 by 10. This batch of files is 28 by whatever. And you're also going to end up in situations where, okay, the transcriber, you're paying them to make a book for you. Uh, you got to pay them for two books, two copies of the same book potentially. Well, we need this one for paper, and we need this one for the Monarch. So I need it done at 40 by 25 and 32 by 10. And that's not a good, because that second copy isn't free. Like the transcriber isn't just changing a couple settings and then saving and then they're done. No, it throws off your whole layout. Like everything gets thrown off when you change the size of the page. And so they're not literally making two books, but they're making a whole book and then they're making like 60% of a book. So they're still doing the bulk of the work involved. And I mean, we knew that just wasn't going to be tenable. And then on top of it, you've got the situation where we've got the graphics. So the Monarch does Braille and tactile graphics. Some of the other displays will probably do Braille and tactile graphics. Well, with our old system, you get a bunch of files. Um, you get your BRFs, your volumes of BRFs, you get your tactile graphics, and then there's nothing associating them with each other. Nothing. So even if we had all those BRFs, we've paid to have these 32 by 10 BRFs made. We've paid to have these tactile graphics made. We give them to the kid. The kid now has a bunch of BRFs that are unrelated to each other, like from a software perspective. There's no way in the software to know like this volume and that volume are related. There's no way to know this Braille page and that tactile graphic are related. There's nothing. And so the workflow for the student is going to be it basically you would have taken their textbook, cut out all the tactile graphics and put them, or, the graphics and put them in a neat stack next to the book. And, good luck learning that way. So we needed a way to incorporate the graphics. The big thing was it needed to be dynamic and reflowable, and the student needed to be able to switch from Braille to graphics and back to Braille and vice versa quickly and easily. So that was really where it started. And obviously our motivation was the Monarch, but we also saw how the impact this could have for the field. And like when we went around and talked to people, we talked, before we actually like started the eBraille project with Daisy, we went around and like talked to all these different organizations, and basically everybody had the same response. Oh, we've wanted to do this, but we didn't know where to start. And so, and that was really how APH felt too. That's part of why we were talking to so many people. We were like, we don't really know where to start, but we feel like there's something we need to do here. So anyway, like seeing all these people that wanted to be involved, that kind of led to what came later. But this was a problem I think the field generally noticed. I also wanted to just take a second to talk about dynamic multi-line Braille. Like, why dynamic multi-line Braille? Like, who cares? We have paper, we have single line Braille displays. Why do we even need a multi-line dynamic display? And it's a good question to ask because I mean, it's not like monarchs are free. We need to justify this device. And we are getting really good feedback from users. Like, users are more interested in reading, more interested in writing and tactile graphics. Their teachers and themselves are reporting they're more engaged. We're seeing increases in their proficiency. It's to the point that interest levels, so engagement is up 54% with STEM material, 57% with non-STEM. Proficiency with STEM and non-STEM is about 50% increase. And then the other one is reduced prep time. So prep time has been reduced by about a third once the Monarch is integrated. And so we're getting really good feedback. And I think I know what's going on here. I mean, it's a toy in a way. Like it's absolutely an educational tool. But when you're a kid, electronics, is more exciting. If, any kid, you can give a kid a book or a tablet. Which one do you think they'd rather have? And the Monarch is more on the tablet side there. Like the Monarch is fun and you can play with it. Even while you're reading, you're interacting with it. It's you're doing things and it's responding. And so it just makes it more exciting and it's neat. Like I'm sure like when their sighted peers see their Monarchs, they're like, "Whoa, what is that?" That's unlike anything I've ever seen. So I do think it's the nature of tech just being more responsive and being more interactive that is helping students be more engaged. So having said that, well, why multi-line versus single line? And it really comes down to formatting. With single line, you don't get formatting. You just get the one line. And it's not even well done most of the time because you get like, let's say you have a 20 cell display, you get like 2 or 3 words, and then you go down and then you get 2 or 3 or 4 more words, and then you get some more, and you're like on one sentence. Like you're still reading, that's a particularly long sentence maybe, but you're still like reading the same sentence. The same thought is broken up across so many refreshes. And that's not a good way to read. It's got to be more engaging to have it. And then since you just have that single line, there is no formatting. We don't even have to show it. Like you could take the old BRF, put it on a single line display, and there'll be awkward long line, short line things that happen. But for the most part, it's going to be fine. But on a multi-line, if I just put that BRF on there, it's going to look terrible. It's going to look terrible. And so you need some way to like have the dynamic content and keep the formatting. Another quick thing too is just the importance of formatting generally. I'm not just talking about Braille formatting. I'm just talking about formatting. Like a story I tell sometimes is we had a resume that we got at APH, and um, the person, it was just a bunch of blocked paragraphs, no headings, no lists. It was just everything was left flush, so left justified. And the person was qualified for the job. But we knew what was going on. Like we understood what was happening. But any other company, just about, getting that resume, wouldn't even read it, wouldn't care, wouldn't be interested. Um, and so you've got to like get formatting in front of the kids. They've got to see what headings are. They've got to understand like why headings are important. They've got to be incorporating headings into their, and when I say incorporating headings, I mean literally incorporating headings, not typing a couple words and hitting enter and saying that's the heading. I'm saying making it a heading and understanding why they should do that and why it's important and why it's expected, and that if you don't do it, it's going to make your document look like you don't care. So anyway, I'm kind of rambling because this is something I really care about, but I think it's important to keep these things in mind. So then I think the other question that comes up is why Braille first? So eBraille is a Braille first standard. So Braille first means that the content in that file is made out of Braille. We could have, and we debated it. We could have gone with a print first solution, like say EPUB or PDF or something like that, where, it's a print based file and then we rely on automatic translation. Um, but there's tons of issues there. Number one, you lose precision. So with automatic translation is very good. It's so much better than it was when I started, but it's still not perfect. Mistakes still get made. And the other thing that happens is you've got options for translation. Not all tables are created equal. And that is especially true if you don't speak English. If you need an English table, we probably, just because I think it's partially because of UEB, but I think we have some of the best tables on like LibLouis, and it's because it's a global code, and so we're all working together to update it. But like if you have a more obscure code, who's maintaining that table? So just because we could maybe get away with automatic translation, that doesn't mean it's true for everyone. And here's the thing. If you have this student taking a test and you're like, this is important, this is going to be 10% of your grade or 5% of your grade or whatever it's going to be, and there's a mistake in the Braille, you've cheated that student out of a fair opportunity. Even if it's just a small thing of like a small misunderstanding or the amount of time it takes them to realize why that doesn't seem right. And so, especially when it comes to math content where you really don't want to rely on automatic translation, um, you want to keep that precision, because that's the thing about a BRF. Like we had to replace BRF because it didn't have graphics, it didn't have the dynamic content. Well, we didn't want to replace it. We wanted to be beside it. But anyway, the great thing about BRF is, for the most part, if I give you a BRF, I know what it's going to do when you open it on your device. Whereas with automatic translation, I don't really know. If you have a device from company A, maybe it opens almost perfectly, and then a device from company B, it opens and it's pretty terrible. You don't know. And who wants to even try to figure it out? Who wants to like focus on that part of the problem? And I feel bad for the kid who has the display from company B, who is at a disadvantage, and maybe nobody around them even knows it. The other thing about a print-based solution is we'd have to change our entire production process. There's not enough transcribers as it is. But if we'd gone with a print-based solution, we also then would have had to like go look for people that could do MathML, because the way you automatically translate technical materials is MathML. If you've got MathML, you can get Braille. If you just have plain text, you're going to run into problems. So we would be telling our existing transcribers, hey, if you want to stay in this field, I know UEB happened, that was rough. I know Formats 2011 and then Formats 2016 happened, and that was rough. But hey, we've got a new one for you. Like now you have to learn HTML and you got to learn how to do MathML, and it's going to be really fun. A bunch of people would have quit. A bunch of people would have quit. We'd have even less people available. We'd probably have to pay more because while Braille is like it's a very skilled job being a Braille transcriber. Um, it's so niche that you don't have a lot of competition. Whereas creating MathML and having those skills, that is a competitive field. So yes, it's going to be useful to know, and you're going to be competing with lots more uh, uh, people. So a print first solution would have had some additional flexibility, but it would have cost us precision and it would have led to a more complex production process. I want to add one more thing here. There's a country I won't name. I don't want to embarrass them, but I talked to them and their Braille organization, and they use a print-based solution. They create an accessible EPUB. The kid puts that on a single line Braille display. It gets automatically translated. Then they have a stack of tactile graphics that sits next to the. And then I was like, oh, wow, okay, I could see the advantages to that. And then I was like, how much does it cost? And how long does it take to get the book to the kid? It takes them just about as long to get the book to the kid, and it costs just about as much. So, I mean, ultimately, I think it's an inferior solution that's not even gonna, you're not even gonna save money. I don't think money should be our like main concern here. It's the kids, but you're not even saving money. You're giving the kid an inferior product and you're not even really getting that much out of it. All right. Let's get into the process. I won't go into this one as deep, but I feel like that foundation at the start really helps set up what it is we're trying to do and why we did what we did. Because it's not like, you can't make decisions on this kind of scale without some people disagreeing with you. And so I want to like upfront say, here's what I think. And now you're armed with that. And if you disagree, you know where I'm coming from and you can approach your rebuttal or however you want to put it, with that knowledge. So, like I said, we talked to all these people and we knew we needed to get something going, but we also knew that, APH does a lot of things. We're good at a lot of stuff. This wasn't our wheelhouse, organizing this kind of effort. That A in the APH really, really makes us focus on one particular place. And so our international reach wasn't what it could be. And so we reached out to the DAISY Consortium. If you haven't heard of them, they are an organization that is dedicated to accessibility for reading materials. So basically, accessibility and literacy. So it worked perfectly, that their mission aligned so well with what we needed. And they've done this before. They created DT Book. They helped create NIMS. They've helped create EPUB. Like they've been involved in this. And we ended up working with 91 individuals representing more than 50 organizations across 16 countries. So, I mean, these are people all over, different languages, different cultures, different Braille regions. Everything's so different. And Braille does not have that much consistency from like region to region. It's not as consistent as you might think it would be. And I mean, the folks there, they represented Braille users, people from Braille standards organizations, transcribers, teachers, libraries, and then hardware and software companies. Because everybody's got a different output, our outlook. And not everybody's like created equal here either. I want to be clear. Like, I think the most important folks, like, I think it starts with the Braille users, and then like way down is like the hardware and software companies. Like, saying that as a person who works at a hardware and software company, we are important, but like, we're going to be fine. Like, our needs are going to get met. It's the Braille user, it's the teacher, it's the library, it's the transcriber. You know, those are the folks that like their needs may not get met if they're not addressed early in the process. So big thing AP Daisy did was we circled back to the beginning. Let's just define the problem. Let's agree on what it is we're trying to solve. Once we've defined the problem, here are the limitations of BRF, and here's what we're wanting, and here's, generally and how it's not possible. And then the biggest part of the process was defining the features and changes we wanted. So we went and with no regard for what is technically possible. We just talked about what it was we thought would be useful for Braille users, whether they're in the classroom or on a bus or in the office, whatever it is. And came up with the features and changes that we wanted to see, with the idea being once we had all those, then we went looking to see if anything did that. Because if we build it on a pre-existing solution, we really save ourselves a ton of time because we can just build off of what they're doing instead of reinventing the wheel. So ultimately, after like defining all the features we wanted and the changes that we thought we would need, and looking at the pre-existing solutions and considering what would be so this was where technical reality came in of like, okay, so what are we not going to be able to do? What's out of scope? And ultimately EPUB was the answer. EPUB does a lot of things right and was almost built to purpose for our needs with just some minor tweaks overall. And then we spent a long time defining the details and technical requirements. And this part was much more difficult because it was, okay, well, this is the thing we want to do that EPUB could maybe do. How do we get EPUB to do that? What is going to be involved? Like, yeah, I'll get to this later, so I'm not going to say that part now. Then once we had all that, then it was working with folks to create or adapt software to support the standard. And there's a lot happening there. I'll talk about that later on. Are there any questions so far? Does anybody want to unmute and ask a question? We're at about the midway point. All right. All right, so let's get into what it is. So I've talked a lot around what it is, but yeah, new digital format designed specifically for Braille. And then it combines the flexibility of ebooks with the precision of Braille rules. Works across multiple devices. And then the idea is to be a future-proof way to read, write, and share Braille. Nothing's really future-proof, but by attaching our wagon to the star that is EPUB. So EPUB companies like Amazon, Apple, Microsoft, some of the largest companies in the world have some investment in EPUB. So by attaching our wagon to their star, we get to take advantage of any innovations they make on that side without having to pour all that money and time and expertise into it on our end. We just have to worry about the Braille part of it. They'll worry about the tech part of it, kind of outside of the Braille. What are the differences with BRF? So we've talked a lot about BRF and like what's going on there. It's static. The big one, eBraille uses Unicode instead of ASCII. If you're not familiar with ASCII, what I mean when I say that, it's an encoding system. And just like APH, the A in ASCII stands for American. So it's the American standard. And it is basically the keys on your keyboard. And so in this case, you all probably know this, but some of the folks I talk to don't know this, so I'm sharing it anyway. But the contractions don't necessarily appear on your keyboard. There's no, I mean, none of them do, but there is no contraction key on your keyboard. And so that's why we're using $ for the ED symbol, or we're using the ampersand for
You're
the
saying,
and
Willow,
symbol.
you don't have an AR key on your keyboard?
AR. You have an AR key on your keyboard?
No, but I
Yeah.
like this. I like this because and this is funny for for blind people who've ever tried to create Braille without a Braille translator. How you do it, by writing greater thans and nines and sixes and all these different things you can do. You can get away with to create, the syntax.
Yeah. And if you find a 4 in your document, good luck figuring out without context what it's supposed to be.
Right.
Um, so ASCII's the keys on your keyboard. You're using that to make Braille. It's an American standard, so other countries don't necessarily follow it. A lot of countries do follow it, but it's not followed universally. Unicode is an international standard. And with Unicode, if you're not familiar with Unicode, it's the emojis, smiley faces, thumbs up, those kinds of things. Those are all Unicode. And within Unicode, it's this whole standard. Um, every possible Braille configuration is available. So now you're not representing Braille with a $ and then putting a font on it. You're representing Braille with Braille. So there's no confusion. There's no needing to think about, well, what encoding system were they using? I had a file that came from Spain, and me and the lady that were working on it took us a while, an embarrassing amount of time to figure out that she was using a different encoding system than me. And that's why we kept seeing different Braille characters. The other thing, too, is if they don't have the font that you used and you didn't embed the font that you used, they don't see Braille at all. They just get, $ASCII or whatever. So it's just with Unicode, we're using Braille to make Braille, and there's not going to be any confusion about what a particular character is supposed to be. It uses markup instead of blank space. I'm going to talk a lot about markup, but markup is basically just tags that say everything inside these tags is a paragraph. Everything inside these tags is a heading. So, like, I'll give you an example. Like, for headings, there's H1, H2, H3, on and on and on. H1 in our case would be a centered heading. So, a heading 1. You'd have a tag at the beginning that's like, it says H1. It's like less than H1 slash greater than. And then you'd have the text, and then and no slash. I messed that up, but you get the idea. H1 at the beginning, then you'd have the text. This is a centered heading, and then you close the tag. So you'd have a closing H1, and now you know everything inside of there. Markup is the thing that gives eBraille all of its features. It's probably the most important part of eBraille. And I'm going to talk more about it, but by having markup, we get all these extra features, whereas with BRF, we just had blank space. There's no such thing as a paragraph inside of a BRF. A paragraph in a BRF is just 4 sentences in a trench coat. It is pretending 4 lines in a trench coat. It's just pretending to be a paragraph. It's just separate lines with nothing associating them with each other. Includes links. Links we'll talk about more, but another way to improve navigation. Dynamic formatting, we've already talked about a lot. Metadata isn't the most exciting topic, but metadata is essentially data about the thing. So metadata is data about the file. So what's the title? Who's the author? Who wrote it? When was it published? Um, Metadata is useful though. It's useful for Braille users. It's useful for libraries and companies and schools. So it's a good way to organize stuff. And then lastly, of course, it bundles graphics, which we know BRF doesn't do. So I'm not going to do a deep dive on any of these, but just want to talk about each of the 3 parts real quick. So the markup, that's HTML. You've probably heard of HTML. but it's what makes the internet. It's kind of the most basic version of what the internet is just HTML code. And that's the tagging. It organizes the content. It makes sure the Braille display knows where to put things, knows where to start a new thing, knows how the information relates to each other. It's also how we add links, and we can use it to add internal and external links. And it's how websites use HTML to structure a page. Now, the next one is CSS. It's a terribly named, I guess, coding standard, but it is cascading style sheets. Cascading style sheets. And basically, it's the styling rules. You can think of it like a style guide for eBraille. It so you've got the tag saying this is a heading. The CSS is saying, well, this heading should be centered, and it should have a blank before and a blank after a centered heading. So the tagging tells you it's an H1. The CSS is what makes it look like what we are expecting an H1, a centered heading, to look like. And it also ensures the Braille formatting is consistent. We don't need to know how big your display is before we produce the file. The CSS is going to automatically and dynamically tell the software how to lay everything out on the space available because of the tagging in the CSS. I already talked about metadata. That's probably all you need to know about it. So I'm going to skip this slide because it's just a repeat. The graphics, I mean, we all get why graphics are important. We had to pick the file types. So we went with JPEG, PNG, PDF, and SVG as the 4 supported file types. It just occurred to me the 4 horsemen of Braille tactile graphics. But JPEG and PNG aren't great. They are image file types. Number one, they don't scale. So if I zoom in on either one, it's going to get blurry. Number two, they're not lossless. Part of the reason why some of the internet is so blurry is if you find a JPEG online and you save it, your JPEG that you saved will not be as good as the JPEG that you saw. So your JPEG is going to be like 99.999% as good as that original JPEG. And then the next person, it's going to compound and it's going to get worse. And it's going to get worse. And it's just going to get blurrier. And that is true of both JPEG and PNG. The other thing is being an image, you can't put text in it. You can have pictures of text, but you can't actually have text. So it limits what you can do. However, there's a lot of developing countries where JPEG and PNG is how they make graphics. And who are we to come in and say, you need to do this differently. You can't use the methods you've been using and that you've built your entire industry around. We need you to change everything overnight. And I mean, they are image file types, so it makes sense to support them. And they're supported by the EPUB standard. The next one's PDF. And that's what we tend to use in the developed world. And that's the other reason why we can't go to the developing world and tell them they're doing it wrong. It's because we're doing it wrong too, just in a different way. So PDF, the D in PDF stands for document. It's not even an image type. You can put images in it. It's heavily image based, but it is for documents, not for graphics. And then here's where it gets really tricky with PDF. So with PDF, you can put text in it. So I can have Braille labels in my PDF, and those will be accessible. They'll work really well, and they'll have lots of functions that the user can take advantage of. But you can also very easily accidentally make a PDF that doesn't have text in it. It has pictures of text. So even though you can put text, a lot of times people don't. A lot of times it's just an image of text. And so you've got all the same problems as JPEG and PNG. PDF is lossless, so you're not going to lose anything saving it. So that's good. But then on scalability, like being able to zoom in and zoom out, it can scale, but it doesn't have to. You don't actually know what kind of PDF you have. So maybe it'll scale, maybe it won't scale, and you won't know until you open it. Unless if you make it, you'll know. But if you're getting someone else's PDF, you won't know which one you've got until you open it. So you're gonna get like a lot of inconsistency. You're gonna, and we all know this, good PDFs and bad PDFs. Um, those that's the thing. So but we included it because a lot of folks use PDF. It's an accepted file standard for tactile graphics in the developed world. The fourth one here is SVG, which stands for Scalable Vector Graphics. And there are people making tactile graphics with SVG, but it's very few folks. It's very rare to hear of somebody making SVG graphics. So, but SVG, it's scalable, so you can zoom in. It's lossless, so you're not going to lose anything if you save it. You can include text in it. And then here's the really cool thing about SVG. You could hand code an SVG. So without ever drawing a single line, you can write code to produce an SVG. You can also draw, don't get me wrong. You can also draw like a traditional image, but if you wanted to, you could write an SVG, which makes it more accessible than any image file type that exists, just because of how you can actually access it as text. So we included SVG as kind of a hope for the field that we could start getting people to move to SVG. Because I do think, and a lot of folks think this, but a lot of folks are thinking SVG is the future of tactile graphics. We'll eventually get where we're all making SVGs. Um, and we get the advantages of including the graphics, but one that hasn't been talked about is alt text. So we know from studies that students are better able to understand tactile graphics if you prime them to know what it is they're about to look at. If I give you a tactile graphic, you're going to have a much different experience if I don't tell you what it is versus if I tell you, it's an elephant. Now you know it's an elephant. You're not guessing. You're trying to figure out, what's going on, how it's oriented, everything like that. But you're not trying to guess and piece together all this really difficult information. I think tactile graphics are amazing, and I don't want to discourage anyone from teaching them or learning them and getting, excited about them. They're very difficult. It is a skill. And I'm sure you all know this as teachers, but like they're very difficult. If you've ever like closed your eyes, if you're sighted, or put like a blindfold on yourself and then reviewed a tactile graphic, it's really hard. It can be done. We know people do it, but whatever we can do to make it easier is going to help that kid enjoy tactile graphics and whatever subject it is that is using them at that time. And so we're going to require alt text. And now every tactile graphic will have a very short, like one sentence description. And then that way the student can be primed before they look at it and have a better chance of understanding it and not have to waste as much time like trying to figure out what it is it's trying to show. So, you know, together these make up eBraille. HTML gives the book its structure, CSS applies the Braille formatting rules, metadata provides the book's identity, and then the graphics make graphics easier to access and improves consistency and storage of files. And then the big benefit is it can work on single line displays, multi-line displays, and it can work on embossers. Right now, the only device that like explicitly supports eBraille is the Monarch. But there's more devices that will be coming, and eventually we'll have it on single line displays and we'll have it on more multi-line displays. Embossing is going to be the biggest challenge, but I do think we'll get there. Um, Headings, links, table of contents, and page numbers make books easier to navigate. Navigation is a huge problem for students. You all know this. Like, if the student is, whether they've got a digital file or a hard copy file, navigation's going to take them a beat longer than it should have to because of the lack of information that's available to the student. Whereas with eBraille, that information is available and they can do the things that their peers around them are doing. including tactile diagrams, metadata, built on EPUB to grow with technology. The coolest feature that is possible with eBraille is giving corrections in real time. So a lot of Braille production is proofreading. And it if Braille's already taking too long to produce, I could send you the like earliest draft of that Braille, and then the next time you open it, whatever changes have been approved can then be downloaded to your file, and now your file's updated. That was never possible with BRF. With BRF, if I wanted to make changes, I was going to have to, I mean, basically I would just make a new BRF and then overwrite your old BRF. You would lose anything you'd done to it on your own, any notes, any bookmarks, all gone. So I'm really excited about the possibilities there, and it's something we're going to be looking at over the next year or so. And then you can update formatting to match the user's expectations. Um, so the CSS is going to tell it how to format it, but you could also use different CSS rules with the same Braille and have it look different. There is no universal Braille formatting. The only rule that Braille internationally seems to agree, there's two rules that Braille agrees about internationally. Number one is that paragraphs start in cell 3 and then they continue on to cell 1. That one seems to be pretty universal, that indented paragraphs are 3-1. The only other universal rule about Braille formatting is that all Braille goes left to right. And that's because of the limitations of the technology um, as Braille's, expanded. So, making and reading eBraille. Do you need to learn how to code? No. So, I worry, like, I want people to understand, like, what it is that's going on with eBraille. I want people to be informed because then, like, you'll understand better, like, what's happening when you use the file, when you make the file, all that. But I worry, like, by talking about HTML, by talking about CSS and metadata, that I'm going to cause people to tune out or to panic. I think the biggest problem I've seen with eBraille is everyone thinks it's going to be more difficult than it is. Like, yes, there are challenges with eBraille. Yes, there are things we have to do, but you don't need to learn how to code. It was a part of our process that we didn't want to drastically change how Braille was created. That seemed out of scope. We weren't there to fix Braille's production problems. We were there to try to help, but we were ultimately there to make a better reading experience. So we wanted to keep the production process as similar to the old process as possible. And that's really helpful because Duxbury is adding a save to eBraille feature. Braille Blaster's adding it as well. And Sao Mai Braille, who some of you may have heard of, they're out of Vietnam. They're a free Braille transcription tool that's available in English. They're going to be supporting eBraille. And so by keeping the workflow similar, ideally someone, if you use Duxbury, all you're going to really have to do is maybe you'll learn how to add links, you'll learn how to insert your technical graphics, and then you'll have to go save to eBraille when you're done. The rest of the process will be pretty similar. It's not really going to change. So, yeah, eBraille's new, but the process to make eBraille is 95% the same as the process to make a BRF. The big difference is before, when you saved your BRF, at the end of the thing, we threw out a bunch of information to make an inferior file from what you created. With eBraille, we're just taking all that work you did and keeping it so that we can use it for the benefit of the reader. We've also got the BRF to eBraille converter, and this takes your BRF files and turns them into eBraille files. I think the converter is very good. I want to be clear that it's not perfect because what we're doing is we're looking at the formatting of the BRF, which, as we've established, is just blank space. And we're trying to say, this is a heading, this is a paragraph, this is a list, this is a table, this is a page number. We're trying to identify what each piece is. And a lot of the pieces look similar. But so we're very good, but it's not going to be perfect. The whole idea is to be a bridge that helps us get from BRF to eBraille in a future where you're able to just make an eBraille file from scratch. And so people don't have to redo their libraries. And then last, we have the DAISY pipeline, which is a program from DAISY that converts print files into Braille files. It converts files types into each other. And so for our purposes, the main thing that I care about is you can use it to create an eBraille file. So you can convert a docx, an EPUB, DT book. It'll do an automatic conversion. Um, I don't love it from a like education standpoint, but I do love it from like a just literacy standpoint. I'm super happy it exists. I would ask folks to not rely on it for classroom materials. Reading in Braille, eBraille, again, at Monarch first display, we've got updates coming that are going to make it even better. We're going to be adding it to the Mantis and Chameleon. Uh, so that'll be coming. Any display can access eBraille using a screen reader. Any display. Um, you have your eBraille, you open it in a browser, and now via your screen reader, you can access all the information of the eBraille on your Braille display. So you get all the navigation, you get the links, you get the consistent content. Um, Even if your display is 20 years old, as long as it works with JAWS or NVDA or iOS, you're going to be okay. And more displays will support eBraille over time. There's several displays in development that are going to have eBraille support. So I'm excited about more options. I don't like that right now, if you want to read eBraille the way it's meant to be read, you have to spend a lot of money to do it. I want it to be available to everybody. Are you telling me that I'm out of time, Peter?
No, no,
Oh,
no. I'm just
okay.
amped up. I'm ready for some contributions.
Yeah. Um, yeah. Do you all have any questions?
And I guess I'll take this time and Willow, thank you so much. I love this, and it can be dense, right? It can, as you said, like when you get into the kind of the minutia of it, it seems it can be intimidating when that's not the intention, but it's really helpful to understand what went on and what goes on to actually build a file standard. And I'll tell you, and I don't know, Willow, if you want, if I'd love to share it, but that white paper that I still talk about not even remotely being able to understand that you had written,
Yeah.
that is one of the I've been a Braille reader since I was 3 years old, and I'm a very proficient Braille reader. And I know Braille music, and I know math, and I did chemistry, and I've done UEB math and Nemeth and all these things. That white paper was fascinatingly, completely incomprehensible to me. Like I had no clue what that thing was talking about. And just the effort that went into and what's gone into making this truly navigable Braille file is incredible. And I think for the teachers out there, as you look to us for your books and for the future, I would encourage you, especially if you have a Monarch, and no one's getting rid of paper Braille.
Yeah.
We've made it
Yeah.
very clear we we are no one is getting rid of paper Braille, but I would strongly encourage if you're able to, and if you especially if you have a Monarch, to in parallel with your physical Braille book over the next year or two, taking the e-Braille versions as we get them and working with them because it will be a major, major difference. And we're taking those 27 or 32 or 80 volumes of Braille and, in theory, consolidating it down into a single Monarch device or your Braille display or navigating it, with your,
It's a single file.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
80 volumes with graphics as one file that you just open, and now you have access to that whole book
And
and all of
also,
its
and,
graphics.
and the same for embossing, right? And there are times where our Braille production, just based on how we farm it out, can take 3, 4, 5, 6 months, depending on the lift and what's going on in the books. And this is a way also for you to emboss Braille content and get that a lot quicker. So there's so much here, not just for Monarch users, for everyone. But I have hope especially in a state that like Illinois that is so still remains so textbook, physical textbook heavy, which kind of bucks the trend generally across the country. We tend to have a lot of folks who request Braille, hard copy Braille books. We have shelves and shelves and shelves of them outside my office, and that's fine. But I think the future of Braille is going to be a shift toward what has happened in the kind of the print reading world, which is we still have plenty of physical print books, but people do prefer and do gravitate toward their e-readers. They gravitate toward their iPads. They gravitate toward their Kindles, or I don't know if anyone still uses a Nook. There's probably someone out there who still uses a Nook.
Yeah,
Um, but
a Kobo.
it's the hope, and this is really what eBraille sought to do, and this is an unbelievable time for it to come alive. So I hope there's some questions. I will keep the recording going for a little bit. And Willow, I just thank you tremendously for coming in and kind of explaining a lot of this and getting everyone jazzed up.
Awesome. Yeah. And are you going to post this publicly?
Well, yeah, so it will be on our YouTube channel. And we have an IIMC YouTube channel, so when we will have it available for,
Awesome.
I mean, really for our teachers, but technically, yes, publicly, but it will be broadcasted to our newsletter in terms of the archive, and then that is a on our website will be a link to the playlist, so that'll have this webinar. We'll
Okay,
also have
cool.
some other ones that we do.
Cool. So I put
And
my email in the chat. I'm not going to say it out loud because I don't want it in the recording,
yeah, you're good.
but it's in the chat. So if you have any questions that you don't get to ask or whatever it is, feel free to email me.
And I'm always happy to put you in touch with Willow, and also, and I've been able to kind of talk the talk and certainly have presented a lot of these same slides over the years. I am in no way, shape, or form a Braille transcriber and do not have the knowledge base Willow has, but I've fully kind of grasped this and have been walking through it. So if I can help you clear up any questions or can put you in touch with Willow, always happy to do that because there will always be questions. And I'm even myself, I'm very curious on the converter and kind of seeing some of that stuff in action. And as we move into into the actual kind of launch. Can I ask one important one though? As of today, what files or what is currently available as an eBraille? Is it still only the eBraille sample file, or have there been more created? Is there any sort of pilot or anything else that's available besides Treasure Island, Willow?
So there've been a lot created because we do have folks using the converter. But as far as like publicly available that you can just go download, right now it is just the Treasure Island sample file. But that's going to change probably starting in January
Yeah.
because we're going to release this new eBraille update. I'm going to be doing you're going to be the first to hear this, but I'm going to be making a book specifically to show off eBraille that's going to be fun for kids to use.
Can you
I'm
put
really
some
excited
tactile
about
graphics of Chicago hot dogs in the book?
it. They will be indecipherable. They will be tactily indiscriminate, I think is, yeah. You won't be able to tell.
Oh, that's awesome. And I think too, again, and for all of you who are kind of hearing this and are unsure, and I mean, there's one sample file that's on the APH website. We've seen it. It's been out for quite a few months at this point, but I think for everyone, this is new, and people are, going to say, "Well, I'll believe it when I see it, right?
Yeah.
I'll
So
really kind of wrap my head around it once I fully understand it in front of me in the classroom." And that's where we're going to be able to help you with that too, as more files come online.
so I'm gonna send you Peter. I'm gonna send you my PowerPoint. I'm gonna send you a link to download videos and documentation for the converter. And then I'm gonna send you a link to download the converter itself.
Awesome.
And then you can share that with
Yeah.
folks as you want to.
Excellent.
I want folks to try it and give us feedback. We've gotten really good feedback from the field test. This is going to be a working build. So we can have everything like 98% perfect and then make a few changes and now we're 70% perfect. So please, please don't judge our progress like based on the build I give you. I'll give you the best one that we've got. But keep in mind it's not the released version. So it's just for trying out.
So with
Um,
that, I'm going to stop the recording And thank you so much, Willow. I'm going to stop the recording and we certainly can take, if there are any questions, we can absolutely take those. So I'm going to stop this right now.